Hello, everybody, and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. My name is Sam Biccarino, and I'm your host for the season preview for Everton. We're going to be taking a look at what's happened for the Toffees over the summer, and a little look at what we're expecting is going to happen this season. Alongside me, I've got two of the regulars to do that with. First up is someone who, has had a bit of good news this week, is Izzy Duddy. Izzy, why don't you tell everyone why you're wearing that shirt?
Yeah, I found out this week that I have been chosen to go be one of the volunteers at the Under-20 Women's World Cup in Poland. I'll be heading out there beginning of September, hoping to catch a few England matches and see how the girls get on. So, yeah, exciting times.
Times indeed. Did you say you're going to be getting up to hopefully one of the quarterfinal games?
Hopefully, I guess I could theoretically stay as long as I want, but maybe work won't let me ride out the whole tournament in Poland. But yeah, definitely my shifts will take me up to at least the quarterfinals. So hopefully I'll get to see an England team in action. I have absolute faith that they'll get at least there.
Yeah, that should be enough to see at least one England game. And alongside me and Izzy is another one of our regulars in a shirt that I've not seen for some time, but a Cape Town shirt, Jacob Bernstein.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we're not doing a Cape Town City season preview. We are doing an Everton preview, but I'm in dark blue, so I'm repping the colours. And yeah, Everton have had their first couple of preseason games, so getting excited for the season now.
Yeah, and let's get into what Everton's season is going to look like because. Well, in fact, before we get to that, let's have a look at just a quick recap of what happened last season. Everton finished 8th in the WSL with 23 points. It was actually their third consecutive 8th place finish in the WSL. They had 23 points back in the 23-24 season, then 24 points the season after, and then 23 points last season. So finishing 8th 3 times in a row and just 1 point apart of sort of a range is barely anything. And yeah, Jacob, I guess that's quite consistency in a way. If that's, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, really.
I think 8th is probably about right given where Everton are at the moment. I think 25-26 was a mixed season for them. I think there was quite a lot of there was some optimism going into the season, especially ahead of the fact that Everton announced that they were going to play all their games at Goodison. And I think that was quite an excitement. But as a matter of fact, they actually had the 10th best or third worst home record in the league. They only had 3 wins having moved to Goodison, which I think they'll be quite disappointed by. But they did have a decent away record, the sixth best in the league. They obviously had a bit of turbulence throughout the season with changing managers in the second half. Brian Sorensen making way for Scott Phelan, who ended the season on a relatively strong note, 3 wins in a row, and then a couple of losses meant that he got 4 wins and 4 losses. I think the highlight of their season for sure was their 1-0 away win at Chelsea, which I'm not sure many people saw coming, but it was a huge win. And yeah, I think they were never really in the pack with kind of with like Brighton and London City, who finished in the like mid-table positions. But I think they'll take some optimism from the fact that they finished like upper mid-table.
It was like a few seasons in a row now where Everton are they're just not a threat. They're not a threat to the Champions League at any point. They're not a threat to getting relegated at any point. They're here. They're in the WSL and they're having a good time. They've had some changes over the summer. Quite a few transfers out. Katja Schnoid, Emily Ramsey, Tony Payne, Kenzie Weir, Melissa Lawley, Elise Stenovic, Layla Harbour, who's ended her loan spell there, and then Kelly Gago have all left the club. I think other than Kelly Gago and maybe Tony Payne, there's probably not that many problems there for Everton with those leaving the club. And I think those coming in is going to be, there's I think quite a few good names, although there's not quite as many. There's a lot of quality coming into the club. So Hannah Blundell has she was obviously on loan last season. That is now permanent. They've signed 3 players from Leicester City, Naomi Mouchon, Hannah Kane and Jutta Rantala. Holly McNamara has come over from Melbourne City. And then Naomi Lazel has been signed as a loan player from Man City. Izzy, is there anyone, well, in fact, you've already told me off mic that there definitely is someone in there in particular that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think, well, Hannah Kane, basically any Leicester player. I think they've essentially robbed. They've raided the Leicester cabinet and they've taken some really, really good players. I think Hannah Kane potentially will really come into her own this season. I think she's a great player going forward and putting crosses in the box. And maybe at Leicester, there was not necessarily anyone on the other end of those crosses to put it away. But I think there's potential for some really nice link ups. And she kind of hopefully will take that place of Tony Payne that I think they'll really miss with Tony going. Noemi Mouchon as well is another player who we've had such high hopes for ever since she came to the WSL, and for whatever reason, whether it be injury or I don't know, managers not picking her, she hasn't managed to kind of get her feet under the proverbial table and actually hit the ground running. So I think hopefully if Scott Phelan feels that she's a reliable player that can start for Everton and get minutes on the pitch, I think we can start to see some real results from her. So I think the two of them, as well, having played together before, should match up and slot in quite nicely.
Yeah, I'm always excited to see Nomi Mouchon play because I remember watching a bit of Leicester in pre-season last season and just thinking that she was not last season, the season before, when it was that she joined the club two summers ago, and just thinking she really reminded me of Myra Ramirez in the way she played, and that she was fast, she was strong, but she also controlled the ball really well, made good decisions, etc. And yeah, it just felt like she was going to be taking the league by storm. She got a really bad injury. I think she got an ACL, so missed pretty much all of the first season she was at the club, and then last season didn't really get a look in, which is is a mystery as some of the decisions at Leicester. Jacob, how about you? Because there's a few other players in there that are joining the club, and there's a lot of good quality in there. Is there anyone or one or two players that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think one that I wanted to point out was Jutta Rantala. Obviously, she's had a couple of years at Leicester, and she's had a bit of an injury-ravaged few years. She only has started 6 WSL games over the past 2 seasons, but she showed a lot of quality in her early days at Leicester. 13 goals in 48 appearances, which I don't think is awful given that injury record. She was in the Finland squad in Euro 2025. Last summer, but she obviously hasn't been at the best of in the best of form given those injuries. But I think given the departures of Tony Payne and Kelly Gagger, I think that makes way for players like Jutta Rantala and Noemi Mouchon to kind of shine in that attack. The other two that I wanted to mention were defenders. Firstly is Hannah Blundell. I think the move makes sense for her. Obviously, she was on loan at Everton in 25-26. She was out for a bit in the season before that and going into last season for the birth of her daughter. And that meant that she missed the early part of last season, but then ended up starting all but 2 WSL games in the second half of the season. And she mentioned in her she mentioned in her interviews the importance of Scott Phelan. And in her decision to join Everton, I think that's really, really important. When we did the Spurs preview, I kind of was really excited when players mentioned Martin Ho and the importance of that. And I think for Hannah Blundell, she also mentioned kind of how important the vibes were at World Sevens, which I quite liked because I was there, and there was an amazing walkout that she did when they played United, and just making fun of the fact that she's now moved to Everton. And the last player that I wanted to mention was Naomi Lazel, who I think will be a compliment to the signing of Hannah Blundell, because I think when you have the players like Lazel and Ruby Mace, the kind of youngsters in the defence for Everton, and then you complement that with more experience like maybe Maz Pacheco or Hannah Blundell, I think that gives an opportunity for the young players to learn off the more experienced players. And I think that Naomi Lazel didn't get loads of game time at City, but I think that it makes sense for her to move to Everton, and hopefully she'll get some game time and can emulate what Ruby Mace has done over the last year for Everton. So yeah, I think there are some exciting ones there. And yeah, a bit of a revamp for the Everton squad.
Yeah, quite a revamp because there's not a lot of. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of squad players that have come in. It feels like those 5 permanent signings and a loan signing are potentially all going to be starting, or even if they're not starting, they're probably going to feature in more than half of the games. In terms of how new players are going to fare, we've obviously spoken a bit. Well, we've actually spoken a bit about almost every player in there. I think Nomi Mouchon, like I've said, is going to be really exciting, but I think the one that could be their best player, maybe their best player this season, but certainly their best new player for me is going to be Holly McNamara. Joining from Melbourne City, she was one of, if not the best players in the A-League last season. 14 goals and 5 assists in 20 appearances. Was fantastic, more than a goal and assist every 90 minutes. She was the top scorer in the league. She also, for forwards, had the most successful dribble. She had the most touches in the opposition box. She won the most fouls. And yeah, she was sort of in the top 10% for quite a lot of metrics. So she's really like, although she's an out and out goal scorer, she actually isn't in a way, because she does do other stuff as well. She does create as well. She does take players on. She's not just going to be someone that stands in the box and waits for a cross. I'm really excited to see how she sort of transitions over. She's only 23. She's obviously been playing in Australia, which the league quality isn't as good as the WSL, so there is an element there. But I think she's probably going to be the best signing this season. I think she's probably going to be up there for one of the best players in the team. I think Tom would be very offended if I didn't mention Courtney Brosnan as someone that's probably going to be one of Everton's best players this season. Ruby Mace is going to be up there. I think Naomi Lazell will as well, because yeah, I think she's great. She's a player that she's scored in the Champions League against Barcelona. She can't be that bad. Coming over to Everton and is probably going to be playing pretty regularly. I think she's going to be really good. But yeah, Izzy, I know I mentioned Ruby Mason there, and I know that she's someone that you in particular think is going to be having a good season.
Yeah, she's a funny one because I think we can kind of unanimously agree that she had a great season last season as well. She is a really excellent player. She's still young, but she plays with a lot of confidence. For all sort of Everton's flaws last season, defensively they were still fairly solid, and I think she is a lot of the reason for that. She had the most defensive contributions in the WSL last season, and so she's clearly a really solid part of that back line. Perhaps, there was a lot of talk last season about her not getting picked for the England squad, particularly for sort of friendly games or sort of the qualifiers, and whether that was sort of the right decision for Serena not to kind of give her the call up. And I think that might still be on the table this season. I don't think the England backline is kind of locked down. I think there's still some inconsistencies between how Serena is playing the players at the back. And I think if she can kind of get off to a really good start and just sort of finish where she left off last season, I think she really has potential to kind of really elevate her game. And obviously she wants to be in that World Cup squad, and maybe this is the time for her to kind of really push to the next level and come out of her shell. So I think hopefully it gives her that drive and that impetus to just like reach a whole new level of her game. And I think with the, as Jacob mentioned, this like experience around her, having new players to link up with, I think it could be potentially a really nice like addition to her game that might sort of spur her on. So yeah, I'm really hoping for her because I think she really deserves it, and I think a really great player that I really want to see her play on an England level. So hopefully this is the season for her.
Yeah, it'd be really good for her to I guess break into that England squad properly. And I think she's got the quality to do it. It's just going to be a case of whether Serena thinks that she's got the quality to do it and to stay there permanently. Someone else that I thought was going to be, I meant to mention earlier, but potentially a bit of a breakthrough player this season is Izzy Hodson. She's played a little bit for Everton here and there. She's been out on 3 loan spells now: Sheffield United, Notts Forest, and then Rosenborg last season. She's Everton's youngest scorer. I think she might be the youngest scorer in the WSL when she scored a header against Arsenal a couple of seasons ago, age 16, and age 18 now. And I think when I've seen her play, I don't get the impression that she's not up to the level yet. I get the impression that, she might not be starting week in, week out, but this time next year she might be, and actually getting some experience, getting more minutes. She can play, she can feature in half of the games this season, maybe get 5 or so starts. I think that's going to do a lot for her development and a lot for Everton going forward, because she's Everton through and through. She's, unless there's like a really mega offer for a big club, I don't think she's going to leave. So I think it'd be in Everton's interest long term to give her some development opportunities as well. Jacob, I'll come to you as well on the sort of star players for next season. Is there any players you think is going to stand out, either new players or current players at the club?
Yeah, I think I've picked out a couple who I think Courtney Brosnan and Ruby Mace are their stand-up players and will be next season. But I think the ones that I've picked out are more under the radar picks in because Everton have quite a good Japanese contingent in their squad, and I think Yuka Mimiki and Hanoka Hayashi, 2 players that are very consistent in. They started 16 WSL games, both of them last season. They really only missed games because of the Asian Cup. And I think a lot of the new signings that Everton have made have been in either the attack or the defence. So I think, I think you can make it. Haruka Hayashi will continue to shine. I think in terms of star players and breakout stars, I think there's a real opportunity for some of the young Everton attackers to have a proper breakout season, because if you look at Everton's top scorers last season, it was a combination of Ornella Vignola and one other player who I can't actually remember off the top of my head, Hanoki Hayashi. I've just double checked. They both only scored 4 goals. So I think if you look at players like Noemi Mouchon coming in, Everton have also signed Zara Kramzar on permanently as she was there for a 6-month loan last season, and also Ornella Vignola. All of the 3 of them are 20 or 19 years old. And I think there's a real opportunity to cement yourself as a starter in that Everton attack, because with a lot of their regular attackers like Kelly Gaga and Tony Payne leaving, that gives an opportunity for some of the new players and also the younger players to break through an attack. So I think there's a real opportunity there.
Yeah, somewhere there's also quite an opportunity for Everton this season is basically at the start of the season, because Izzy, as you pointed out to me sort of half an hour or so ago, they've got a really easy start to the season in comparison to a lot of other teams. They've got, in their first 5 games, they've got West Ham away, Liverpool away, and then they're playing all of the promoted teams. So yeah, I guess it might be a pretty strong start to the season for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to win 4, if not 5 of those starting games, just to get them on into the groove and on the footing of keeping them insurance for the rest of the season, essentially, and get them into the groove. I think that's exactly what happened last season, when that's sort of where things went wrong. They obviously had that crazy first game against Liverpool, and then quickly things unraveled. And I think actually just you've got the opportunity with these on paper easy games to just get some wins under your belt and sort of cement your team, and I think that will bode them well for the rest of the season. Also because Everton tend to be a team that take a big win off a top team somewhere, like we saw them do it at Chelsea, but they definitely have the potential as a team to kind of step up in a big game. And I think when you've got a bit of confidence and a run behind you, when it does come to those games against Arsenal, Chelsea, City, if they can just lock down some points, I think I genuinely think it puts them in a really good place.
It's going to be really important for them to sort of get those points early on in the season as well, because as I just sort of scrolled across to look at the end of the season, it's Arsenal, Man City and Chelsea in 3 of their last 4 games, so they can't rely on their last few fixtures to be picking up points. They need to get it done early doors. Okay, let's move on to floor ceiling success. So this is something we're doing in every season preview. We're going to each go through and say what our floor is for a team, so what's the worst they will realistically do, the ceiling, So what is the best they will realistically do? And then success. So what would have to happen for their season to be regarded as a success? Jacob, we're going to start with you first. What is your floor, ceiling, and success for Everton?
Floor is 11th. My ceiling is 8th. And my success would be a top half finish. The reason that I'd say that is, Sam, obviously you mentioned at the top of the show that Everton have been quite consistent in their 8th place finish. And I don't think that they've quite done enough in this transfer window to warrant finishing any higher. So therefore, I think their ceiling is 8th. Because of that consistency, I've made the floor quite narrow. I think they probably have a stronger squad on paper than the majority of the promoted teams and a couple of other WSL teams. I think they should be able to finish 11th at the lowest. And I think success being top half finish, I think it's a difficult one because obviously it's their first full season under Scott Phelan. I think I want to try and be a bit more realistic. But obviously a top half finish would be a huge success for Everton, given the strengths of teams like Tottenham, Brighton, London City Lionesses, who are all pushing for that kind of European kind of qualification places. Yeah.
My floor for Everton is going to be 12th. My ceiling is 7th. And then success is either a top half finish or making a cup final. So quite similar to Jacobs, but a little bit wider. I do think that although they've got that consistency of coming 8th and getting 23, 24 points a season, that's going to change a little bit because there's 4 more matches this season. So if they still end up on 23, 24 points, that's going to be going backwards and that's not going to be 8th place. But I think there's so many teams from about 7th down, basically. I don't think there's that much difference between all the teams. And I think that you could well see the difference between 7th and 12th being 4 or 5 points. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to that at the end of the season. So that's why, although Everton are quite consistent, that's why my range is a bit bigger. So yeah, ceiling 7th, because I think they can finish in the top half. I don't think they're going to break a top 6 because I think there's going to be, the top 3 teams of Arsenal, City, Chelsea, whatever order they finish in, are going to be above them. I think out of Man United, Brighton, Spurs, London City Lionesses, at least 3 of them are going to be better than Everton. So yeah, that's why I've gone 7th as a ceiling. And then for success, I think if they get top half finish, that's 7th instead of 8th. I think we could say that's progress. Or if they get a cup final, because I think as long as Everton don't get relegated, if you ask an Everton fan, would you rather go to an FA Cup final and finish 11th, or would you rather finish 7th and get knocked out in the quarterfinal? They'd take the FA Cup final every day. So yeah, I'm saying that's as a success for them. So that's where I'm at. Izzy, how about you?
Yeah, pretty similar to you guys, to be honest. I think floor is probably 10th. Ceiling is 7th, and I think success is a cup semi-final. I say cup semi-final because I just don't think that it's a realistic prospect for Everton where they're at right now to reach a final, but I do think that success for them will be really getting to the latter stages of those cup competitions. I think ceiling, they can definitely reach 7th. I think a top half finish would be good, and they should be aiming for that. Like you said, I think there are a lot of other teams in the mix that are kind of fighting for those best of the rest places. And I've said 10th for the floor because I don't realistically expect them to be going below that. I have quite a lot of faith in this renewed Everton squad. And I think when you're looking at the teams that have come up, the people kind of in and around those places like Liverpool, West Ham, even Aston Villa at this stage, I think, I can feasibly see Everton being fairly safe from relegation. So yeah, I'm not expecting to see them in and around the relegation zone.
Yeah, I think it's normally a good sign when we're all on roughly the same page, that none of us are mental. So it's just that we're all...
And this is when they win the WSL.
Yeah, this is when they start becoming excellent, or when they become absolutely terrible and finish 14th and 10 points adrift. No, I think anyone listening at home is probably going to be thinking similar, that they're a bottom half side. that's not at risk of getting relegated, given the strength of the squad. So yeah, that's it for Everton. And I think another thing that success will be is that maybe setting themselves up for a future season, because I think we've all sat here today and said that we don't see them getting way into the top. We don't see them breaking the top 6. We don't see them getting to winning any silverware or anything like that domestically. So maybe it's actually getting players, like young players, improving and getting the squad gelling and being in a good place at this time in 12 months' time from now, in mid-August 2027, we can say, okay, actually Everton might be challenging to go that step further, and they might win the Subway Players Cup, or they might win the FA Cup, or they might break into the top 5 or whatever it is. But we'll wait and see for that. That is our Everton season preview concluded, I guess. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're not already, make sure you're following us at Decoding the WSL on Instagram and TikTok. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You get all your usual podcasts on video, and then there's a few bits of extra content as well. But for now, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Izzy, for joining me. And thank you, viewer/listener. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the next one.